Welcome back to Gray Squadron Gaming. We have another exciting interview here. We have Will Squared here. Welcome, Wills.
Hello.
Hello.
I think everyone knows the Wills at this point, but if not, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves first.
Dope. Well, I'm Will Schick. I'm the VP of Creative Development and Strategy at Atomic Mass Games.
I am Will Pagani, the development director at Atomic Mass Games. A
Perfect.
significantly less impressive title, but
It's definitely a lot easier to remember,
You
so I
could use
wish
some
I
more
had
words
yours
in that
instead of the
title, I
other one.
think,
I
Pagani, for
know.
sure.
I'm just gonna anagram the whole thing. It's gonna be VP of CD and S, or just CDs.
country
VPs
song
of
and dance
CDs.
is my favorite.
Yeah, but they
Might
flipped it
cause
on
more
me.
questions on there.
It was supposed to be country song and dance as an acronym because it was creative strategy and development, and then when they did the paperwork, they flipped strategy and development, and so now it's technically CDs. Not as
Ruined.
good, but VP of CDs actually sounds pretty good, so maybe I'll use that.
That works.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, thank you both for joining us. I know you guys just had a busy time with the big stream coming up with all the new changes and updates and things to the game to kind of finish out that 2.6 cycle, if you will.
Yeah, we're done with that now. You can't call it that anymore. It's just Legion now. There's
Just
there's no
Legion.
number, there's no number, there's no nothing. Like,
That's what we call it now too, so we're good.
yeah.
We're all caught up.
New edition, no fancy subtitles. It's just Legion.
Perfect. Well, let's jump into some questions we got. The first question revolves around the lack of or not many points adjustments, we'll say. So I figured we had a chance, besides, of course, the new units, which we'll touch on, guys, but
Yep.
no one else seemed to get any points checked. So I'll let you guys kind of talk on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Go
Shake,
for
you
it.
go ahead.
No, no, no.
You
Go
take it
for it,
first.
Pagani.
And then
This
I'll
is
get.
this is all
No?
you.
Okay. So we just changed a lot of things over the past year, right? We redid how missions work. We redid a significant number of the characters. We redid a lot of the core units. We redid a bunch of the upgrades. We added in a bunch of things. So really, we're looking to see what that does, right? We saw a lot of results out of Adepticon that were awesome. We saw a Dark Horse win the whole thing, which I love. And to me, that just it shows that like there's so much exploration left to be done here. There's so many things that we have not solved that nobody has solved. We haven't solved them. Y'all haven't solved them. None of them are solved. And that's a very exciting place to be, but it also is a very dangerous place to be from a tinkering perspective, right? There are so many things that are still in the balance that we don't know, we being developers, we being community, that if we start tinkering with things now, we could totally mess something up, right? Like we could go way too hard on something. We could go a different direction. We could do all these different things. And then somebody figures out, oh, hey, these things actually are really great. So we decided to hold off on major points updates. We only did the updated units, essentially. So if you got a new unit card you changed, you got a points update to go alongside that. We didn't touch any of the older units or anything like that we had done before, or any of the ones that did not receive particularly significant updates, right? We did give you update cards for everybody, but if your unit didn't change significantly, you did get a point update. Because we want to see where this all goes, right? We need more data. We've done our play testing. We have done everything we can do there. We want to see what happens. As Shake always says, right? When we push something out the door in that first week, in that first month, we're going to get more games played of Star Wars Legion that we can play in the entire external and internal playtest cycle immediately. The community is massive and huge, and our playtest is big, but not that big. So getting that information is very important to us, and seeing where it all goes. So
Well, yeah, and I mean the other thing to remember too, right, is that of the things that we put on our watch list, which we may talk about or we may talk about now, right? But we did discuss like what this is on the watch list for November. Of those items, none of them have been out really for more than 6 months. So that's a not huge amount of data. Sure, sure.
I
I
think
said,
Empire has been out for.
yeah, that's different though. Well, that technically no, right? Because
I mean,
the
sure.
re the rebalance for Empire was significant. That only happened in July. So I guess you
Sure.
got me by like 2 months or something at this point,
I
maybe.
can't even count. So
I don't want to do the math because I'd have to use my fingies and then it'd look really ridiculous. Um, but
By all the
so I
points
mean,
doing tens. Okay.
again, we like to point out there was a time where Empire was the big scary top dog when Dark Troopers were just out, when Blizzard Force was dominating stuff, right? Like there is a cycle that games go through, in terms of their like ecosystems and how these different things impact each other. There are a couple of rebalanced characters that Empire's been missing. Will Callus and Iden be the sauce that changes things dramatically? I mean, it's unlikely, but we just don't know. Are there, and as Pagani said, there's a lot of unknowns in terms of like list compositions, how many people have actually adapted to, this new Legion and what the new edition is asking them to do and all these different things. And are there solutions that are still hiding that players have yet to find because they're still working through all of these changes in philosophy and game approach and all this stuff? We have our own internal ideas, right? And our thoughts on where, the faction overall might need some boosts and where it might be not, like where these struggles are coming from. But I think there's more data there and there's definitely more testing. We've really only identified the fact that Empire as a whole is lagging a little bit behind post Adepticon. And it's 2 weeks since Adepticon. So if you're expecting massive changes only 2 weeks after a significant event, 6-ish months after a major rebalance, you're probably not really approaching it with a logical mind in terms of like how long these things take, how careful we want to be about making changes so that we don't break other things. It there is a cycle here, and that's also why we have the April and November updates where we can come in and we can say, hey, these are the things we're doing. Right now we're simply releasing the rest of everything to the community. We're fairly happy with where the small amount of points adjustments in November led to in terms of boosting rebels and separatists who were struggling a bit against the oppressive nature of clones and their commandos. And we missed a little bit on those points, but a few minor points adjustments, and look at what has happened to the overall meta. Now, those things didn't necessarily raise up Empire like we had hoped. Empire may have its own unique struggles, but again, those are things that we're aware of, we're looking at, and we're also watching to see what develops in the community. So in November, in 6 months, will we maybe have some adjustments to be made? I would imagine so. But what are those, right? And we also go back to the fact that points are not the end all be all. They're definitely the easiest dial to turn, but sometimes points don't make a difference. Pagani's a big fan. We like to steal each other's sayings a lot because we spend a lot of time with each other. Like, uh, sometimes you can lower the points to 0, and that makes the thing the best thing in the game, but it doesn't actually fix the problem. It just means that it's free. And is free good enough? Well, yeah, in terms of an efficient point choice, right? It's 0. I might as well take as many of them as I can. But does having more stuff than someone else, if that's not the problem, if points aren't the problem, if it's just the fact that the thing doesn't do what it needs to do, points don't fix it. So that's a bigger thing.
Sure.
So there's a lot of different things rolling around. I'm sure Pagani wants to talk a little bit about, we have some new releases coming up, like the build your own commander, so the customizable Imperial agent and officer. So yeah, if you want to discuss a little bit about how forward, releases also impact things, be my
Totally.
guest, Pagani. I've done it before as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be spoiling too much here.
You're
'Cause
fine
I
if
don't
you
have
want to.
Yes,
it in front of me.
well, anything you want.
Oh, okay.
Totally fine with
Great.
it.
Gray,
Thanks.
I don't
Thank
know
you,
if you
guys.
know this about Gray Squadron Gaming, but they love spoilers.
That's true.
I mean, who doesn't really? But when it comes to the customizable commanders, right? I was talking to Andrew Darsom about it, and he thinks that there are at least 4 very unique builds because you'll see more when you get the cards, but essentially you're going to get to pick doctrines, you're going to get to pick weapons, you're going to get to pick specializations, all that kind of stuff, right? And trainings and that kind of thing. And when you create these commanders, he thinks there's at least 4 powerful, unique builds inside of each one of them. And the permutations are huge, right? Like there's, I don't know, 200. If you want to get the whole like math thing, probably well more than that actually. But whatever. 4 very powerful, consistent like ideologies built in each one. And those are just the ones that we have identified, right? Like when you get into those 200 different options, you're going to see more stuff from you guys once again that we can never get in playtest.
Right.
So how that's going to affect different factions, whether that be Empire, like Republic, whatever, that's something that we need to keep an eye on as well, right?
Mm.
So making a bunch of changes now that then y'all don't even have the whole picture when it comes to the build your owns and that kind of stuff. So it'll be very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, right? It's one of those things where if you're disappointed because everything didn't get fixed, as of April 15th, a couple hours ago, maybe when this posts, I don't know how fast y'all are going to be, maybe a day, right? At most. So let's call it less than 24 hours, and I might be right. But I'm usually wrong on podcasts, so it'll just line up with everything else that goes along with stuff. Um, you know, take heart that we're not done. this is not the last one. We have
Yeah.
another one scheduled in November, and we are currently working on several different things. We have a lot of new releases coming out, and there are lots of different ways, not just the build your owns, but maybe there's, battle forces and sub factions are also a very strong and potent way to be able to identify weaknesses and kind of make up the gap. We all know Blizzard Force, right? There's ways to do it right, there's ways to do it wrong. But I think it's a good indicator of the fact that like the tools are there. Sometimes they're just missing the connective tissue that makes everything work synergistically together.
Mhm.
And so there's that. There's also new missions that are going to be coming out in less than a year now, right? You have a whole new battle pack with new missions, new secondaries, new primaries, new advantages. There's so it's a long in the end, right? It's an infinite game when it comes to development. It's not a short term like you get in and then you get out. We're playing forever. And so as long as the game is healthy and can persist and there are players who want to play it and they're enjoying it, then kind of the perfect balance of all four things is something that you just accept as like that's always a goalpost that you'll never hit.
Mhm.
You just try to get as close as possible, and then as it shifts and continues to move down the road, if you've kept the game in a healthy state, you consistently always get to go back and do that. And that's the goal, right? The goal isn't to find perfection and then leave, because even if we found that, we'd have to make something else new, and then that would break everything, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't I imagine that if you polled 100 Legion players and you said, would you rather have the game be perfect and never change, or would you prefer that it be imperfect and you constantly got cool new toys? I mean, I know which one I'm on,
Easy
but
choice for me,
yeah,
personally.
like, and I've seen, and I think we've seen enough data that people get excited when they get new stuff, right? When you see those
Absolutely.
new units, when you see things that you haven't, characters that aren't in the game yet, whether that's a Thrawn, a Tarkin, or whatever. So again, it's one of those things where if you're disappointed, sure. Uh, I think that there's lots of different ground to cover, and we're obviously not done. So in November, right? Hopefully you'll be happier, or somebody will be, right? And we'll just
Depending on
continue
that.
to we'll just continue to push the boulder up the hill because that's what we're here to do.
No, yeah, that sounds good to me. And you kind of mentioned a little bit on the build your owns coming out. I'm assuming, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, that might be the reason why we saw things like the Rebel Officer, Imperial Officer, and the regular Super Tac kind of go away for a little, or at least as just an upgrade for some of them.
Yes. Yeah. So the idea is that we had generic commanders before in those units, and now that we've done something much more interesting and much more, in my opinion, very, very cool, you can use those minis as these in some of the builds. You can use them as the personnel upgrades or things like that inside your units. You can do all those kind of things. So those minis are not useless.
Right.
They still very much have a use. But the build your owns and the customizable commanders are that idea taken to a much higher and much more interesting level.
Yeah, we're really excited for those.
Yeah, we're super excited. I'm not excited to have to paint them all,
I
but
mean, you're never
I'm
are.
super
That's
excited
more
to
of a
play
me
with them.
thing, guys. Don't
That's
worry. Just
that's
ignore
like
Dawn for a second.
painting things is like 70% of the fun, honestly. Like, come on.
People have fun
Uh,
doing that. Man, I
oh
should
yeah.
get into
I
that.
have
We
a
we
lot
need
of
to
fun.
we need to paint jam. We'll get Dallas in. We'll show you how to make it fun. It is definitely a good time.
I
No,
I'll
I
try.
think I think the other thing too, right, is that anytime you kind of come up on a big refresh, right, you come back around. You always want to take a holistic look at what's in the game. Is it doing its job, or is it restricting your ability to do other things? Um, and those types of thoughts, right? Like, and this goes back to a little bit of like why people get a little nervous when you start throwing the word new edition around, because we know that not everything exists in that next edition like it did before, right? It is change. And
You
we
scared.
did our absolute best, internally to make sure that we minimized as much of that pain as possible. But there were always going to be things where, like, as we're looking forward to the next 5 years and saying, well, we want to make this and we want to do that, and we believe that this doesn't work, or even as you're working on getting that next like rule set out and rebalancing all these things, you might look at certain things and just be like, we don't really have a great spot for this to fit. So what do we do with it? Right? Like it might be it might be a special forces unit in an over bloated special forces section. And you can say, well, if we had infinite time, we could probably find a really compelling use for it. Or maybe we just say, you know what, this doesn't really fit or add any significant value to stuff. So we'll just kind of let it go.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe it'll get revisited in the future, maybe it won't, and then of course you throw on that other part of it, which is mentioned in the article and stuff that went up and we talked a little bit about in the stream, which is everything that was before goes through our partners at LFL again, right? Like everything goes through the whole process. And just like we in development and, as a game studio and all that have new ideas and new ways to approach things and all, our partners at LFL also do too, right? Like the Star Wars story is not a static thing. It is changing. They have plans for it. They have things that they want to do in
Mhm.
terms of storytelling, the way in which they view the setting. And those things can change as well. And so then it becomes a really strong discussion with, okay, is the legacy of what was done previously important enough to override maybe something that our partners at LFL are concerned about or have a new vision on? Is it not? Where do we find those compromises? And that becomes a dialogue as well. So, it is more nuanced than just we make choices based on what we feel is best for development as well. Sometimes it's simply a discussion of like, there's these new projects that are on the horizon. There's new stuff that they want to do, and now the story has shifted a little bit, or the vision for what canon is within the thing has changed, right? The Legends move when LFL was purchased by Disney is a great example of how these stories and these myths, these modern day myths, like they evolve too, and they are a living thing, much like the game is. And so that, that's just it's another little aspect of working on these fabulous games and getting to work with an amazing property like Star Wars. That's part of the deal.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I can't tell you how excited I am to try Lando. So let's talk about the new units a little bit. In fact, after we're done filming this, we're going to jump into a game right away for everyone at home, and we're going to start playing them like instantly. So
Right.
don't worry, you guys will see him. But Lando, out of all of them, I think got the largest rework. He's nothing like his old unit, really, to me at all. So what led you guys to kind of go the way you did with him, and kind of where he's at now with his new one step ahead, and kind of that he can, give out orders now. He's got a little bit more of a movement with the steady. He's just very different in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, the removal of flawed from the game, as we've discussed previously, I think was a big one, right?
Yeah.
That was an aspect that we were not super happy with. We didn't feel like it had landed with players. It's neat from a narrative standpoint because these characters are flawed and it's kind of an intriguing game mechanic, but the problem is that it's self-inflicted wounds, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
every time we talked a little bit about this at Adepticon. I think it was with Wintermoon. We were talking about Ahsoka and her independent rule. But the kind of thing that we've learned over many years of making games and doing development is that you can make the most powerful thing you can, but the second that you give it a mandatory negative, players won't take it because it doesn't feel good to have bad things happen to you
True.
when you've
Mhm.
chosen, like through just a happenstance of choosing, right? I like Lando, but now because I'm playing Lando, I have to be subjected to this bad thing that I don't like.
Right.
Um, and 9 times out of 10, we see characters who are very beloved looked over. Like they're just not taken. And when somebody comes in and says, I love Lando, I want to play him, everyone goes, don't, because he's got this mechanic that like just punishes you for taking him.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, I don't understand. That's dumb. And I mean, it kind of is if it's your favorite character, right? Why should you be punished? So like with Ahsoka, right? You make it a choice where you say, okay, she's rebellious and she doesn't listen to orders. Give her independence. So now she becomes more powerful when you choose as the player not to give her the order.
Right.
And that's a choice you get to make, right? That still reflects the character. Flawed is not a choice that you got to make. So that went
I,
away.
I think it's even more than that. Flawed was a choice you gave your opponent that actively hindered your game plan that they paid nothing for.
Hmm.
Right. And that really applied to like Anakin. It
Yeah.
definitely applied to Lando, Callus. Like they all were characters that were heavily played around their flawed cards, which is a very interesting design, but in general doesn't feel very good to play
Right.
to bring it to your list because you're just giving your opponent the silver bullet to beat you for
Yep.
free, right?
And
Like they
can
have
always
no
need
choice
that
in their list
suppression
building
and
against that.
mitigation.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was the first thing we identified as like flawed just as a concept is cool. It's interesting in its narrative, but it just doesn't work
Hmm.
because it makes those characters pariahs, right? You
Yeah.
don't touch them. unless you're playing for fun, and then when you're like, oh, I'm playing for fun because I like this character, then the flaw comes and you're like, this really sucks, you know?
Yeah, it
Um,
just doesn't feel great. And
Yeah.
and so when that went away, it kind of it fundamentally changed. And you'll see, right, the flawed characters, Callus, Anakin, and now Lando. And now you've seen Callus and Lando. They had the most dramatic rebalances of everything
Right.
because once that was kind of gone from their core identity, it was like, all right, well, we're starting from the ground up. So who is Lando and what do we want to lean into? And that idea of like the smooth scoundrel guy who's a gambler and all of that, that's what we targeted in on. And we said, how do we bring that to the game? And some of that was already in his kit. And it was just coming up with ways to, you know, re-express it for the new game and minus a flaw card and some other stuff and
I think,
contingencies too, which was another idea that we liked, but obviously, so Lando got double whammied, and so did Callus, I guess technically. Like both those characters had two keywords that are now just gone from the game.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, and that obviously also kind of works back into his command card ace up your sleeve, right? Is a little bit like contingencies, but has
Right.
that same idea, but not.
That's kind of cool. Yeah.
And those types of things. I don't know if Pagani has specifics that he wants to talk about in terms of, you know, the Lando rework or any stories that he remembers about it.
I mean, yes, I have lots of things to talk about the Lando rework, but specifically contingencies is like with the new sort of 5 round game and how important command cards are and contingencies being this like awkwardly complicated rule for how simple it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like it took a lot of text and then it kind of didn't really do anything, but kind of did a lot. And like, I don't know. To all of us in the development team, we were like, is this really worth including in the game? And where we shook out was no, not really. Right? Does it give you flexibility? Yes, it did. Was it super powerful? It was fine. Right? Is it complicated? Yeah, kind of. Like if you have to explain to somebody exactly the intricacies of how contingencies worked and how it didn't work was a really big one and all that kind of stuff, like we just decided it just wasn't worth it. And it was a
Yeah.
very small number of units that we were already redoing, so we could take it out very easily. Was really just really why contingencies is no longer here. Uh, but when it comes to kind of creating the feel of Lando, right, was we wanted this to be the gambling scoundrel where he's not so much like bet big and lose hard, but bet big. If it goes well, it goes really well. But back to the contingencies, Lando always has a plan if it goes wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see that almost all of his gamble effects have some type of upside on the flip, right? Especially one step ahead, I think is a great show here where if you match, so when you play your command cards, if they match pips, uh, Lando gets to move, or whoever has the keyword gets to move. And if they don't match pips, you get to move somebody else, right? So it's inconsistent. You as a player can't bet on which one you're going to do. You can have an informed opinion, right? You can try and guess what command card they're going to play. You can say, hey, I have this pip that's going to match up, and maybe that's going to work out well. So you can play that game, but if it doesn't work out or it does work out, depending on kind of which one you want, I think is also very interesting, right? Like, do I want Lando to move? Do I want someone else to move? I don't know. It's he's playing both sides.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very Lando thing. And you see that in his command cards, you see that in One Step Ahead, you see that in all these different things. So that was really core to our design for him, was always the like, he's playing the odds, but he's playing both sides of the odds. He's never just like, he doesn't get blown out very often, I guess, right? And lose the Millennium Falcon to Han Solo.
I think you flipped your effects in your dev brain.
So,
I'm pretty sure one step ahead is if they don't match, Lando gets to move. If they do match, matching is the big payoff for him.
This is why we can't have.
you can read it in the book.
That's right.
You can read it in the book. It's in there.
You have the rules now.
took
Why are
time
you
to
asking
make
us
them,
how
man.
things work?
Yes.
We're beyond that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you
We
guys
wrote it down so I don't have to remember it. Thank God.
No, yeah, no, I think he looks good. I think his gun reworking to the range 3 now, or
Mhm.
excuse me, range 2, but with long shot that
Right.
gets range 3 with a steady keyword is a really nice combo too for him. So that way he doesn't feel like he has to kind of sit back. He can kind of
Yeah.
move up and still do some work.
Yeah.
And then-
One of my favorite things that
Oh, you
Well-
go there. I want to talk about the range too.
sure. Why don't you hit that? Because mine's not about
Sure.
that. So stick
Yeah.
on the gun.
So yes, he has long shot, so he can steady, constantly moving around the table, and long shotting that, or he can aim and then long shot as well if he doesn't want to move. But all of his command cards require him to be at range 2. of stuff. So he is very much a commander that gets in there, right? Like, and he does not have the stats of a commander that gets in there. So you have to use these command cards, like Brilliant Spike to immobilize people, Idiot's Array, all these kind of things to get these effects that are very, very powerful, but you do have to commit, and it is a gamble, right? It's always into that gamble of like, can I move him forward so that he may not benefit from bodyguard and that kind of stuff? Does it work out? Back to the Lando, does it work out situation. So
Yeah.
I was gonna say one of the flavor wins I think on the new Lando card is Allies of Convenience, right?
Yes.
It really lets him play into that idea that he is, he's got a little bit of that episode 5
Hmm.
administrator of Cloud City to him, where he is rebel in the game, but now you can take along some extra mercenaries, or he can get call in a favor, to
Right.
help him in his fight against whoever is on the battlefield against him. And I thought that was a really fun suggestion from Andrew Dursum, who's the lead developer. Um, and just works out well. Like it's not particularly powerful. It saves him, an upgrade slot, but I
Nice
think
tool.
it's
Right. Yeah.
really
It
thematic.
gives them
It's
some
really
flavor.
thematic. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very thematic. And those ones for me are always the big ones, right? When you can kind of feel the character oozing out of the card,
Yeah.
make
No,
it
he
as
can
gross as
call Mando
possible.
and Boba, and they both can come and join the party, and he's got it
Yeah.
built in. That's really nice.
Exactly.
you know, order him.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, that's good. And then the other thing I want to touch on the new stuff is I noticed it's Callus, it's Iden, and no, not Iden, Callus, Jin, and Cassian all went from commanders to operatives.
Yes.
Yep.
Cassian, though, has a field commander keyword, which you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, everyone can, but I think that's the only unit that's on a vehicle with the field commander keyword as of right now.
Currently,
I
yes.
think it is. So
I
that is a really
believe
cool
you.
spice.
I believe you are correct. You see
We all
Pagani's
looked
gears
around at each
turning.
other.
Everyone's thinking, but
There's a lot of
yes,
I think
units.
that is
that
correct.
is that I believe that is he is the currently the only one.
So I thought that was a really cool way to give him the operative with natural infiltrate, but also still have him have some commander flavor with the command upgrade now too. So that was a really cool way. So kind of just talk about what led you guys to that way from taking those three from the commander rank down to the operative rank, and then some other changes, of course, to them.
Yeah, so one of the big goals going forward for Legion, and we talked about this where we were working on command cards that were less generically amazing and more sort of specific. Oh, I'm in the situation where this is going to be useful. You can see that kind of in the Lando ones. Like if nobody's within range two of Lando, don't play the if they're within range two of Lando card. Uh, so moving sort of in that direction, we also want to see more characters played in Star Wars, right? Star Wars is about characters. It's about these wonderful things that we see on the screen, and we want people to be able to play with those characters. So you can only take two commanders, you can only take two operatives. So if we can take some of those commanders and shift them into the operative slot, and then do things like lower overall point values for operatives, you'll see that coming. Once again, we didn't do that now, right? But like you'll see that in our future designs, much like I talked about our future designs for the command cards. Cheaper operatives in general allow you to bring more of these characters to the table. Because if you're saying, hey, I really want to play like in Bright Village, right? You can play like Han, Leia, Chewie, um, Luke, and all those characters at the same time, but that's like 700 points or something. Like it's like a lot of points once you're all doing that, and you just don't have an army anymore. So if we can create ways to have these characters on the table where they don't cost as many points or they don't necessarily conflict in the same slots anymore, then you can get more of those characters on the table.
I mean,
It's
Callus got a pretty significant bump down in points for sure.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that was one of those Callus especially, there were a couple of folks in our playtesting groups that really loved Callus. They were big fans of Callus in his original
huge.
form. Which was a little surprising to us,
Sometimes
based
the
on the
mutton chops
discussion
just
about
get you.
yeah, well, just based on how flawed had worked and the fact that it was there. But so it's interesting to watch their responses as you kind of make a character that if somebody loves less powerful to make them less points, but then also find them hopefully a niche that's really interesting within the faction and allow them to be able to take now their favorite character with other favorite characters, right?
Mm.
And so I think that was really interesting. We had discussions initially about potentially shifting organizational slots and numbers within the different factions, but what we found was this is another Paganiism. If you realize that you're allowing somebody to make a mistake and you can avoid it, just don't do that. And as we've discussed a lot, right? Legion is an army game. It's about units. It doesn't really function if you take nothing but characters. Um, and so giving people the opportunity to create bad lists, and I'll put bad in quotes, right? Because you could have fun with it and you could still play a game with it, but there's a level of efficiency at which a player is just not going to see very good success. And when you don't see success over and over again, a lot of us become frustrated and we walk away, right? Like
Mhm.
if you're going to give me the option to take 5 characters and only a couple of units in my rebel army because you opened up the number of slots I have to take in terms of that organization for more operatives or more commanders, then I have to assume as a player that that is a viable choice. It may not be the most efficient or powerful choice, but it is a viable choice. And when you look at that from any kind of like significant game knowledge, you say that is probably not a very viable choice, right? Like it's just not going to work well for you 90% of the time.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got Jin, independent move with agile, nimble. I like, yeah, I like that. That's so kind of Jin. I think Jin was the other one besides Callus, and I think Cassian obviously got, in my opinion, Cassian and Iden got a smaller rework. Jin,
Much
Callus,
smaller.
and then Lando got the bigger one. So
Mm-hmm.
Jin, she fits a very different role. She was that kind of three courage commander that wasn't Luke in the Rebel Army previously, but she didn't do a lot great. She did some things good. I know some people love her. I wasn't a huge fan of her playstyle, but her new form, that movement she has to her looks really enticing, especially like if you bring like Lando or someone to help her. You know, it seems like there's a lot of options for her now.
So I think we talked earlier, right, about the Paganiism of you can just continually reduce points on something, and eventually it will be the best thing in the game because it's gotten so low that it's just ridiculous for whatever it is. And I think we got to the point with Jen where reducing points was no longer viable. I think she came out, I don't know the numbers, but she dropped about 40% in points
Yeah.
from her original launch, and she still wasn't good, right? She wasn't being taken. She wasn't like yes, there are Jen stands out there, and I respect y'all, and y'all are doing the Lord's work. But she's not doing like quality things on the table. Uh, so we wanted to fix that, right? We think Jen is a very cool character. She does all sorts of awesome things in the movie. How can we get that, right? So we created this very skirmishy, very hard to pin down, uh, very awkward to play against, which I think is kind of our rebel identity now that we've gotten there, Schick. Like now that we've thought about this a lot more, what is the rebel identity? Awkward to play against. I think is kind of where we're at because you never really know what's going on, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
with infiltrate, disengage, nimble, independent move, like all these different things are just crazy that like you put it all together and it creates this very unique and very interesting unit that is very cool in my opinion, right? Every time we were playtesting her, I would either be watching the game or playing the game, and I would be like, "Oh my god, how did Jen even get there?" And they're like, "I don't know, she just did stuff and it was awesome." I'm like,
You just
"Perfect,
keep
great."
moving, and I don't understand.
Yeah. And then we gave her a little bit of that support back, right? With Rebellions Are Built on Hope, lets her give other units danger sense, which is something that we haven't really explored, right? Is like, what happens when you take units that are not supposed to have danger sense and give them danger sense? It turns out it's really cool. But then we were like, oh, you're also adding a bunch of suppression to your one courage guys. We should probably also give them Indomitable. So like we had a lot of the like going back to the Lando thing, the gamble of I can give my unit suppression, they get danger sense, they get shot, that's danger sense two. So the second time they're even harder to kill. Like so, this gamble of like, can I then roll off a suppression with Indomitable, get my full activation, is a big play there for Jen, and I really like where she came out
She kind of
because
got a better version and more versatile version of Cassian's card, which gives, special forces the danger sense before. So
Mm-hmm.
I like that, 'cause especially since they're both Rogue One characters, they kind of play well. They kind of, you know,
Gotta be too much danger sense.
no, it's not all the
Stop.
danger sense.
No more danger sense.
He doesn't like my
no more danger
goals.
sense.
Just ignore him.
It was, I
Yeah,
mean,
so
and
it's
that was definitely a thing, right? Is like you want to see these characters pair the way we see them in media. We always talk about being able to play canonically. So making sure that Jin and Cassian felt really well, like really, really solid together on the table, and we're doing the things that we expect them to do. And I think the other thing too, right, to think about when you're talking about these characters getting moved is that when you get to a point where you're doing another edition or you're doing a big refresh like we're doing here, you have the opportunity to say, okay, well, we're not really at the same point when these characters were released. Like when Jin and Cassian came out, you kind of needed more commanders, right? You wanted more variety in your command options at that point in the life cycle of the game because they came out relatively early. I mean, in the first 2 years, if my memory on the release pattern serves. Um, and so at that point, right, when you're like, well, what's the biggest change you can make to an army to make it play differently? The commander, right? Whole new command hand, whole new suite of abilities, all this stuff. The commander slot is super valuable. So let's go ahead and make characters commanders. But now when you're sitting here, 6 years later, and you're looking at things and you're saying, okay, we have all these commanders, but we don't have very many operatives. Like, why is that? We should really fill out the operative slot. You do get to go back and say, okay, well, if these were released in a more diverse field, would you have made them a commander originally, or would they make more sense as operatives? And for us, it was very much these characters feel like operatives. Like even
Yeah.
people followed Jin and they follow Cassian, but they're not commanders. In fact, Jin is very specifically not even part of the rebellion when
Right.
she takes them to Scarif, right? They choose to follow her, but she has no command. She has no rank within the Rebel Alliance. She's just taking a bunch of troops and going AWOL.
Her dad
And
was just some fancy important guy, and all of a
yeah,
sudden he's really important.
and like Cassian's kind of the same way. He does have a rank, so I mean, he made slightly more sense as a commander. But at the same time, when we see him in Rogue One, and especially now that we're seeing him in Andor, he doesn't really lead, right? His rank is more like a special forces guy. He just has rank because he gets the job done, and they want to say, "Good job, buddy. We'll promote you
Yeah.
for blowing up this, that, or the other thing." But he's not running around like being a great leader of men, right? It's not really in his character. Um so that also kind of came down to the idea of let's shift these characters that feel a lot more like your Jedi Knight Lukes, who are important and inspiring to people around them, but they're not the ones who are the generals, right? They're not the ones that are given the
Yeah.
orders directly.
Yeah.
I mean, I know like a lot of players. I played Cassian a ton, and he had covert ops, which I think is another keyword that's now gone from the game, right? I don't
Yep.
think anyone left with that. Yeah, was I almost always made him an
I was
operative
gonna say,
anyway, so I could infiltrate him. So
Yeah.
the fact of just making the operative, give me the infiltrate, and with him, he still has field commander is just like the best possible scenario for me of what I wanted to see on him.
Hmm.
And I like that you guys also, to give you guys kudos, is you put the like Iden has a sniper now on her gun, so people don't have
Yeah.
to never. Because as someone who's played Legion since that came out, I
I've
don't think I've
I've
ever
never
played
once
against
used
someone with
it.
Iden with just the sniper and nothing else. Like because then you don't bring her repeater, and then it makes her very
Yeah.
situational. She's not putting out the damage number she needs. And now she can shoot the sniper, and then when she gets closer, she closes and pulls out the other gun, right? So it's so much a better feel for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, baking in that customizable nature and like what you feel when you play her in Battlefront 2, right? The
Yeah,
idea that you can swap mid-fight, to fit a bunch of different. It makes her feel very special forces. Like
Yeah.
that's what you really want to see out of it. So I think that was a pretty easy change that we identified. It's just, and this again goes back to putting more power into each character's kit, so they're less reliant on having to be able to play 6 command cards to realize their full capacity because they can't. You can't
Right.
play 6 now anyway. And also, as we've discussed many times, we want you to be able to take more characters. If you have to take all of their command cards to make the character function properly, that's a problem because you only get
Right.
so many cards. And so that was, again, it's just one of those things I think that kind of gives a nod to, and hopefully folks see it with all these characters, right? Is that they do great things when their command cards are played in the situations where those command cards are relevant. But even if you never played a command card with them, they still function and do good things for your force. They
Mm.
may not be the best if you don't play any command cards, but I think the level is there to where you're like, all right, well, 75 points, that's I take Jin, or I can take a unit and some add-ons, right? I can take a super squad or something ish around the same amount. Like which one gives me more?
yeah.
Um,
No, it feels good. The new point, Lando and or Callus and Jin are cheap. They do a lot. I like seeing the hold the line another unit with the command card and Cal, so that was a brilliant move too with
Yeah.
him. Built in immune Pierce. Yeah, I think they're fitting some niches. So I'm excited to get them to the table. Um, we'll change gears a little bit now. We'll talk about some of the other things you guys mentioned and you had in the article was Palp, Royal Guards, Pathfinders. This
Mm-hmm.
is the part I would cue in the song "In the Arms of an Angel," right, as we would talk about. But I don't want to get copyright infringed, so we're not
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
gonna. But if you guys could just talk about, well, what led to that and what your thoughts are, just so everyone can kind of hear them again, or maybe a little bit more than when you talked before.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing was just, like we've discussed a few times now with like the Imperial officer, the Rebel officer, those kinds of things. You get to a point to where you take a holistic look at the game and you say, okay, A, are these things adding significant value? And then B, because it all goes back through LFL, we also have to have those conversations again, right? So it is like a whole fresh start. And um, with those options specifically, we felt that there was definitely places where we could utilize aspects of their kit better in future releases, i.e., the Imperial High Command box, right? A lot of the things we wanted to do with those characters, and we had ideas for those characters. Palpatine kind of stepped on their toes, and he made it so that we had to be less exciting or we had less space to really move with those characters. Well, at the same time, being a unit that largely outside of some trick plays, back in the day, like him and his mobile, as
Hmm.
it was called, um, he wasn't like blowing anything up, right? He wasn't the one that you often went to. He wasn't as bad as a Jin, I would say, but like he wasn't a Vader. He
Right.
wasn't making or breaking Empire. And so a combination of all those different factors said is do we have a great idea for where he can fit? B, does he fit within LFL's vision of where they see the story and the game and all of that stuff? And then C, if we do that work, are we going to wind up in a situation where we might be able to make things less cool in the future that than we could otherwise? Um, and so, for a variety of reasons, we decided that those two, the Palpatine and the Royal Guard, probably needed to be cut. And it was a similar discussion for Pathfinders, right? Where they were the fourth Special Forces option. They are cool in the movie, but we were kind of like, what exactly can we, where can we make these fit? And is it just better to spend that time that we would really have to work on this in other places, especially with those knowing that they easily fit in and players can still use their miniatures that they've painted
Hmm.
and hobbied on as rebel troopers, right? That was the really easy one. It was like we have a home for these that allow them to still have value because that's the big thing, right? When if you could see Pagani or my shelf that are all blurred out behind us, you would see just tons of miniatures, right? Like we know we've been there. I've lived through many an edition in my life, and I've seen much of my collection get relegated to the dustbin because it no longer exists. And being on the side of like the developer and the person who has to like keep a game going and make it interesting and do all this stuff, like I understand both sides of it. I understand why it's healthy sometimes to cut things. I also understand how frustrating it can be as a player to see those things go that you've invested that time and effort into. And so our main goal was we would make no unnecessary cuts. Like everything that we lost was for a very specific set of reasons. And we saw no other way forward than to remove them from the game. And in every instance that we could, we ensured that there was some way you could utilize them somewhere else. Um, you know, Palpatine and the Royal Guard just happen to be so unique and so specific to what they are that there was no other place for them to be used officially. So, it was an unfortunate, it's the one kind of downer on an otherwise very exciting time and a really
Hmm.
awesome, I think, project that we've, now released to the world. And we've seen a lot of excitement and people, having a lot of fun. Adepticon was a blast. The
Yeah.
games that were played there were great. Watching how the meta has been unfolding and shifting as players get more comfortable with how the game progresses and all of that has been wonderful and very fulfilling. Um, but it's just unfortunately it's part of the game in some ways when you have a living, breathing property and lifestyle game like this that there are going to be things that that get cut or disappear for various reasons. Um, so if you're upset about that or disappointed about that, I totally get it. No one here is going to tell you that those aren't valid feelings to have. All I can really say is that, hopefully you'll trust in the process enough to understand that like we did what we had to do in order to make sure that the future of the game was as bright as it could be.
Right.
Sure.
And I mean, we got so many exciting things coming, especially Empire with the command box. Like, we got 3 new cool commanders coming out. We don't even know what they do yet. They're gonna be super cool though.
It's true. You got a lot.
I mean,
We,
they know.
we
Hit him
don't.
with the
We
spoiler
don't.
shit.
Yeah, they know.
Oh, the spoiler? You
We
mean
want
about
him.
pulling the strings and how Tarkin
Yeah.
likes to pull strings just like the Emperor does?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
That's certainly a thing that might be happening at some point.
that sounds awesome.
Now, is the Tarkin model gonna come without shoes? Like we all know, he didn't wear
No,
shoes.
no, he's got his boots.
And
The miniature does not have that strong of a rider. We can put him in whatever we
You
want.
just lost Will down there.
There's a customizable bare feet option.
yeah,
I,
think we
I
need
do
that.
appreciate some of the things you guys we had like for instance the DC-15. It's no longer an upgrade on phase ones because there's not phase ones. It's called infantry and marksman, but the marksmen hold the DC-15. So there's your model, right? So
Mhm.
those are nice ways to do that. And my Pathfinders I painted and built up just like a lot of us have can now be slotted in Rebel Troopers. Now you can
Mhm.
diversify how your Rebel Troopers look, which in my opinion is great because they're kind of a ragtag army anyways. They all don't look the same anyhow. So now
Yeah.
you can really mix it up even more with the new sculpts, the old sculpts, and Pathfinders kind of mixed thrown in there
Right.
too. So that's at least something really cool you can do with those minis you hobbied. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it's not a situation that anyone's going to try to convince you is great, right?
Right.
But I think the benefits will far outweigh the long-term benefits far outweigh the short-term kind of like pain. And again, in most instances, I was very happy with the fact that we were able to find official uses for the vast majority of things that, no longer have a
Yeah.
official unit card. Right. Some of which were already baked in the game, like the officers already were upgrades. And then, as Pagani said, you can also use those officers as your customizable ones if you want to, based on what you're building and stuff, if it makes
Yeah.
sense. But
No, that's a good point. And then one of the other big things you showed today was some core rulebook changes. I think one of the larger ones, if I'm remembering correctly, was the way you guys are kind of showing off how to use area terrain, which is someone who's played in a lot of tournaments is appreciative because a lot of people don't use area terrain, period. Like it's just something
yes.
we don't see a ton of. So I think this will kind of maybe
And
incentivize people to use it more, but maybe talk a little bit more about why you guys did that change.
well, you just said it, right? Which is the fact that area terrain
Don't blow his head up
was,
like that, please.
I know,
I'm gonna
sorry.
play a
You
game with this
nailed
guy
it. You nailed it in
afterwards.
one. Area terrain, the rules for area terrain were kind of disincentivizing its use through how they applied, how you had to figure it out, all this stuff. And I mean, area
They're
terrain
also
is,
just unclear.
yeah, it
They are
wasn't,
now.
they weren't super clear, but I think, from a hobbyist and a war gamer perspective, right? Area terrain is typically the coolest terrain you ever see on a table. It's the big ruins, it's the forests, it's the crash vehicles, it's all these different things. Like
The
not
market stall.
having, yeah, not having good area terrain rules that players would want to utilize and could utilize easily and had added impact to the game was a huge miss from our point of view. So I'm sure Pagani can tell you about how we went about solving that.
Clarified how it works. It's not exciting. Like we really
It's not true. We changed a little bit,
He
right?
teed you up and you just missed.
I know, I
I mean,
know.
we just did the thing, Chick. What do you want?
I mean, I feel like we did a little bit more than that between
Well,
it provides cover
sorry.
while you're in it. We clarified the line of sight
Sure.
issues in terms of being able to see in and out, not being able to
Yeah.
see through, right? And people who have played other war games will be like, yeah, this feels very familiar. And it should, because it's how area terrain probably should work everywhere, because it has a track record of being very good in those games. So that was, I think it was the big thing was just saying, all right, well, we've played a lot of these games. What exactly do we have to do to make it streamlined and functional? Pagani can talk about his favorite change, which is the change to at and completely within and all the.
Yes,
Why
please.
don't you
And
talk about that?
beyond.
Because that's on every card. Every card in the new docs basically has some change that
I don't
corresponds
know.
to that
I
language
don't know if it's
update.
100%, but it's a significant amount for one of a few different reasons. We went through and we redid the style of Legion. What we mean by that is the style in which words are used inside of the game, and that applied to the entire game. the whole rule book, every card, not the ones with the keywords only, but you get
Mhm.
me. Um, and we changed at within and beyond to within, completely within, and not within. Uh, and this is just something that's like always driven me a little bit crazy is that at has an English meaning, and that was not the meaning it was being used in the game. And that blew my mind. And I couldn't deal with it. So I made them all change it to within means within, and completely within means completely within, and not within means not within.
Now
Love it.
you're getting
I
to
love it. The
confusing
words
people.
just mean what they are. So, I mean, to be a little less smarmy about it, I guess, we would also see a lot of questions pop up in the Discords and the Facebook groups. So, like, this says it's at this range. Like, what does that mean? And I'm like, thank you. Thank you, person on the internet. I agree. What does that mean? You could read the rule book, but not everyone does that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's
I really like that change for that. And then we also added back into that clarity thing of like, you don't have to go dig through the rule book to find the meaning of things. We added timing clauses onto everything. So during this round, while you're within this range, like all that kind of stuff, everything got a timing clause. Because we also saw a lot, and this one actually has been on command cards for quite a while for the newer ones. But it's like, how long does this command card last? It says I gain blah blah blah. You're like, well, it lasts the round because that's what the core rulebook says. But if you just read the card, it lasts forever.
Hmm.
So it was another very common new player question that was very easy to solve with language. So we did it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that also applied to a lot of other things. So we did like bolding phases that are inside of rules text. So the roll dice step, the command phase, like so your eyes will pick that up very quickly. You can see that kind of stuff. We already had like the keyword templating was already in Legion, but now we have additional bolds for character names, phases, attack steps, like steps inside of different things. If it's referencing very specific stuff, it'll get bolded as well, like something with a name. So all that thing is hopefully to make the rules more readable and more parsable and more understandable as we go forward. And that was a huge thing was rewriting all of the rules without changing the functionality accidentally is a huge undertaking, like huge undertaking. It took a lot of editing passes. Be like, no, I think you did change this, and then you get to fight about the word if or something. You're like, no. So like it was a huge deal.
Yeah.
Very boring dev stuff, but I'm very happy it's all there so that now it can all be clear. And I know the rules mods are very excited about it as well.
Yeah, I can't tell you the amount of times playing with even just us or other people in the community and stuff that the at versus within conversation about people arguing about no, at means this. And you're like, no, it really, it actually doesn't. And then,
Yeah, like words should mean what they mean.
Yep.
And if they're not, they need to be like bolded and a capital letter that says you hey go look here for the definition.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I think that's especially nice because with all of the re-release of all these new starter sets and the hopeful influx of all this new Legion blood, that we're already seeing tons of comments about people wanting to join the game, people asking if they should wait to join the game. But like those people coming into the game now are going to come into a game that has a lot more clarity in its structure and how everything reads. So I think that's going to be great.
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's definitely a an attempt to modernize the game and make it more accessible, right? I think the a lot of us older war gamers are used to really crazy, fat rule books that were like this that had multiple charts in them and really crazy like almost uh like programming language to their text and that's just not how games are successful anymore, right? Like they've tabletop has cracked into a wide audience in general because it has become more accessible because rules language has become much more readable and more casual language and folks who create these products and devs like Pagani and his team who write rules have become better at turning technical language into normal parlance rather than like this really weird, second language.
Yeah.
And so it's another thing too when you talk about all these different changes. Those rule book changes are, as you say, absolutely targeted to make the game very easy for a new player to come in and understand. Hopefully, also easy for an existing player to be able to look at it and be like, oh, I don't have to go to the rules forum for this anymore. I understand what this means, or there's less there's less areas where you might get confused or have to go back to the rule book.
Mhm.
A big thing we always talk about is anytime a player has to stop the game in process and go to a rule book, you've ruined the game experience because you have taken them out. We always talk about the narrative and the story and that shared experience that you have with your opponent was you're playing this game. The second that you walk away from that, the magic is gone, right? Because now it's become a game and I have to look up a rule and I have to reset my brain and say, I'm going to read this language and I'm going to try to understand it. There's nothing happening on the tabletop. And usually you don't get back into that, right? Like, especially for new players or less, hardcore players, that whole process kind of takes them out of the magic, and then they come back and they kind of play, but what they remember is being confused, right?
Mm.
They remember the problems or the hurdles they ran into, not the magical story that they were telling together through this shared game experience.
Yeah.
And that's another one where, you know, we we write rules for the most basic of players, the most casual of players, not for the competitive folks, because the competitive folks, they'll figure it out. It's your kitchen tabletop, like your
Mhm.
your parent and kid, right, who are playing, or the two siblings who have picked up this game for the first time ever. They're the ones who need great solid rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. One of the rules that I saw a couple questions on quickly in the chats was about the command card verbiage. How the
Mm.
example I think was like the Ahsoka's different eras
Mhm.
of Ahsoka's can't take each other's cards. Someone was asking about does that apply to like Op Vader and Commander Vader, Op Luke, Commander Luke, or is that specifically for like future proofing? Or if you guys want to just talk about that for just a second.
Yeah, so there are a few of the command cards that were released that have the subtitles listed in the character name as well. So if it just has the main character's name, then any version of that character can take it. If it also includes the subtitle, only that version of the character can take it.
Mhm.
Makes perfect sense.
So
Yeah,
I
and
believe the only ones updated for that were some of the operative Luke ones.
Luke, before he's a Jedi, can no longer say, I'm a Jedi like my father before me.
Yes. Yeah. So I think there were a few of those there, but I think that was the only ones that were changed for this.
Yeah.
So
And a lot of that is future looking, right? Like our goal, as folks have seen from the roadmap, we've got a new version of Grievous coming out. We've got new versions of Han and Luke.
Yeah.
We're really now at a moment where we get to start doing a lot of the cool things like revisiting characters, doing new versions of characters at different points in their story. Ahsoka kind of being one of the most distinct from
Mhm.
her Rebel version to um, her Galactic Republic version. So one of the things that we discovered as we were working on those characters and playtesting them and all of that is that giving a character access to 9+ command cards because they have multiple versions is problematic, because then you really start to create a field where it's like, well, this is the best one and this is the best one and this is the best one, and so I'll just take these. And now as developers, we either have to balance around the fact that, Luke on a Tauntaun can take I am a Jedi, or whichever card like really breaks him, or we can say the card's the problem. We just won't let him take that card. And now we get to make a cool character that does all the cool things we want. And we can make command cards that specifically bolster that play style. And then if we make a command card that bolsters Tauntaun Luke's playstyle, but breaks non-Tauntaun Commander Luke because it does something that he really wants in his kit that just like puts him to the moon, okay, you can't take that card, right? Like it it solves so much of the problematic interactions as you try to make cool things do cool things,
Yeah.
but also have to worry about how those cool things interact with previous cool things, right? So compartmentalizing some of that allows these characters to be the best versions of themselves.
Yeah, no, I think that makes
Yeah.
sense, especially with this will be the third version of Luke, so that'd be a
Mhm.
lot. That'd be a big pool of cards
Yeah.
to.
It'd be a lot of cards, right? I
So that,
mean,
that does make sense.
It
Yeah.
always puts you in a bad place when you're like, I've got 6 Luke cards and Luke died round 1.
Yeah.
That's a tough spot.
It's not what you want to see for sure, but
Standing orders from here on out,
I was gonna
guys.
say, as if you
Just gonna
took
leave this
Hondo,
baby.
if you took Hondo as well, it's probably not the worst because at least you can revel in the fact that he's a four across the board the whole time.
Hondo's just living that
He'd
standing
be
orders dream.
laughing in the background as he's running away from the.
Maybe you're playing against the Lando play and you're like, yeah, I dare you to match my pip. Let's do it. Standing orders.
Bring it on, Lando.
That's
You can
good.
have your one move.
That's right.
Okay.
You want that unit to move? You're gonna have to play standing orders too. I don't think you have the balls.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Getting to the end of this, I always ask this towards the end, at least to you guys. What are you looking forward most now that it's all out there? We're through the 2.6 cycle, or this new edition, whatever we want to call it, right? We're through the end of the cards. We're gonna have all uniform cards now. What are you looking forward to most next?
I'm looking forward to the innovation, right? Like one of the things that I love the most about playing any of these games is innovating and trying to find new things and trying out the weird stuff, right? Like there are a lot of podcasts and a lot of community people that were like, "Who? What do you think is going to win Worlds?" And I guarantee you, nobody had ISPs on that list. And I
Not
love
with missile pods anyway.
certainly not with
Yeah,
missile
missile
pods.
pods, right?
Yeah.
And I love people getting creative out there and trying new things and seeing what comes out, right? Like I think that's one of the things that brought me to be a developer is the constant like hunger to be like, well, what if we tried this? Well, what about that? Is this cool? Does this work? What about that? And I love doing it myself. I love seeing other people do it. Like I love all of it. So that's really my thing is seeing what the community comes up with, seeing what is strong. Was it the things we thought were going to be strong? Was it not the things that we thought were going to be strong? And going from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said this in some interview post Adepticon, but I think it was with you guys, but
You
there were
did a
so
lot.
many of them. There were so many of them. Like they all
You're
blurred
a busy
together
guy that
that
day for
day.
sure.
Yeah. Um, but I think, the thing that's most exciting is the fact that we have this new kind of launch pad, right? We're through all the work. We're through the 2.6, like the all that stuff, right? And now we're effectively fresh. It is a brand new starting point, even though it's built upon a really strong foundation of what came before. And we've seen time and time again that those launching points that are built on previous success, but then re-engineering that success for the greater future, right? Those can be transformative moments. Like
Mhm.
you can talk about 40K second edition to third edition. Where would 40K be without that third edition? Right? That was built upon the second edition, but became an entirely different kind of experience, dramatically so, more dramatically than what we're talking about here. I mean, that's an extreme example of a game that was one thing and then built itself into another. But without that change, you don't get to 10th, you don't get to 11th here in a year and a half or whatever it winds up being on their timetable. And I think that is really exciting. It's really exciting to be at that point where you're kind of like, okay, everybody has everything. We have these amazing new starters that are going to be coming out a little later this year. Ideally, we're going to see a ton of new people come to the game and try it out for the first time. And we really believe that we've built a solid foundation for them to see success, to fall in love with the game like everyone else has done who's already playing it previously in this new edition. And from there we get to move forward. And we also get to kind of move forward in the way that it's like it's all new stuff now, right?
Yes.
There's no there's kind of no treading water, which is where you wind up being as we kind of work through this stuff and everything else. And so that's also really exciting. It's exciting to be at a moment now where, like I mentioned, at that Adepticon, roadmap presentation next year, you all have no idea what we're going to present to you. You have zero idea, and it's incredible. Like
Like a
it's it's incredible.
Keep trying, buddy.
Let me say this again. You have no idea
I
what we are going to present to you next year. You have no idea.
mean, we had
Like
no idea we were getting Grievous on a wheel bike And then we got Grievous on wheel bikes.
I'm saying, like, so the idea that now we get to kind of show the fruit of that labor and those works, and everything that we show forward is built off of what is now, right? What happened less than 24 hours ago,
Hmm.
with the full release. Like, that's really exciting. It's really exciting to know that, we've kind of climbed this summit, but there's more mountain to go, and there's a lot more great things to get to. And I love surprising people. I love seeing people get really excited about those reveals. I think there's that hope that a lot of the stuff that players have been waiting for a long time, or wondering, like, when's its time? When is it going to show up? Why isn't this person here? Where's this person? What about this unit? What about this thing? Like, we're now at a point to where those things can quite quickly become a reality and suddenly, like, pop into the game. And then, of course, there's lots of things that you never expect that we can pull out, and surprise you with, and all of this stuff. So I think it's just a really exciting time, right? It is much like the launch of a new game. We are in a new era of a game that has a really strong foundation and a great community, and hopefully we'll see that community built even to higher heights, and that gives all of us more access and ability to do more and more cool things, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Legion or any game grows not based on what we as the developers want for it. We have many hopes and dreams, but Legion as a game grows based on the community
Right.
and the community around it, right? If we all as a Legion community come together and make the game great and bring tons of people into it and make it a place that everyone wants to play, make it the game, that opens up possibilities for us to explore that, we don't get if that's not the case, right? Because at the end of the day, it is a business, as we talk about all the time, and that there is a reality that resources are allocated based on how successful, the returns are on your products, and how excited people are about your game and all of that stuff. So, the people who hold all the cards for the success of Legion are the people who are listening to this podcast. Like, it's a thing that we've talked about a lot, right? Like, how we present and act as a community, how we approach the games, how we approach critique and criticism to hit the goal that we all want, which is to make the game the best it possibly can be. Like, all of that kind of is in your hands, right? We listen. I know there's people out there who are talking about characters that, like, they'll never make this character because they just won't, but I would love to see it. I've seen them all. I've seen all of those statements, and I guarantee you that we've discussed, or maybe they're on the schedule and you don't even know, right? Even Gungans are probably on the schedule somewhere.
Gungans, man.
It's confirmed. He confirmed it.
But let me tell you, every time somebody says Gungans, that clock meme is true.
But don't say that, because people are going to
just-
hate me. Don't
I
say
just push it back.
You
It
ruined
just
it
goes-
all.
Every time a
Reset the
podcaster asks me about Gungans, I just go, "That's another year. That's
Oh,
another year.
man.
Let's move Gungans out."
Well.
So I know. I'm a benevolent-ish dictator, as Pagani will tell you. The ish is important.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
man.
anyway, I mean, to me, that's what's most exciting, right? I'm really excited to see how the community grows, how, we get to take this game into the next level of all the things that we're going to surprise people with next year. Like, we got some super exciting stuff for 2026 that
Great. Yeah, I'm
it would
excited
be
for
awesome to
those-
tell you now, but it'll be even better to tell you in March when I
Totally.
can do it live in front of everyone.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
always the
we'll
best.
be there for it.
We'll be there.
for sure.
No, I
I'll
want to
save
thank
you
you guys.
seats again.
Yes,
Awesome.
please. That was fantastic. Well, thank you both for coming on. We always appreciate chatting with you guys. I'm sure we'll get you guys back maybe sometime around when the core sets hit and everything, so we can revitalize and get everyone into the new sets.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to just get them into our community. We have so many local
Yeah.
people who are really wanting to bite, but just don't know where to bite yet. And I'll borrow stuff, but they want their own stuff because it's a hobby game.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so those new ones hit. It's going to be great.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
coming. It's coming. I bet we'll talk before that, because I'm sure I'll see you at Gen Con. So
Oh yeah, I'll be at Gen Con.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll see you
Yeah.
then.
yeah, you can catch me. You can catch me somewhere along there, and we'll chat about
I'll
stuff.
just grab you right from the demo table again. It'll be-
Exactly. It'll be fine.
Perfect.
It's what I'm there for anyway.
Hopefully, no one steps on my tripod and breaks it this time. You know who you
That we'll find a better corner to put it up. But yeah, the Gen Con attendee, like, their zone is it's
Yeah.
pretty tight. They're very focused on getting
They got to get to
X,
that
Y, or
boost.
Z
Yeah.
spot. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I got to demo this game, man.
Exactly. Well, perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for
Yes.
coming on. We'll catch you guys
Absolutely.
next time. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you
for having
guys.
us.